when you get a toxicity in your body, you're usually going to try to find out certain ways to get them out, namely your colon, right? Your spleen, your kidneys, your gallbladder, your lymph nodes and your lymph system, the second layer of your skin, probably all layers of your skin. And when you put all of those together, remember that all the toxicities that are coming into your body, they have to get into these organs, and the organs have to make a coordinated effort in unison to actually detoxify you.
Hey friends, welcome back. You're listening to the Ancient Health Podcast, and today you get a special episode. It's from the two C's, your hosts, Courtney and Dr. Motley, whose first name is Chris, which is why I call it the two C's. We're C squared, right? Maybe I'll just say it's C squared.
That's
the
right.
CNC podcast. So today I'm actually really excited to do a deep dive because these conversations are always needed, I feel like, to really take what we know about a certain topic of our health and give it a lot more depth and understanding. So today we're going to do just that. And we're going to talk specifically about toxins, which I know for so many people, there's a lot of conversation around it and a lot of fear. But what my hope is that in this conversation, you'll understand what the influence of toxins are on your body. We can really start to identify those, right? Where the threats are coming from and what the strategies are to help your body eliminate toxins, because that's really the action piece that's tied to your health. We can't always control the different toxins that we're exposed to, but we can help our bodies eliminate the toxins. And to me, that's the really important part of the conversation. We're going to focus today on sweat because we've got some interesting data and some studies we're going to go over that shows that sweating actually helps mobilize and move toxins more efficiently than a lot of other ways, like a lot of supplements, a lot of these biohacking tools can support detoxification, but there is something very special and specific about sweat that allows you to detoxify toxins in a much more effective way. So, Dr. Motley, thank you for being here. It's always fun when we get to do these episodes together.
It's always fun to do the co-hosting. This is the best. Like, this is what like podcasting should be. So I'm so glad we get to jump on and we get to talk and hang out. And Courtney and I get so busy in the weeks and such that it gets a little heavy. Like we can't jump on and do podcasts together like we used to. So to me, it's always a big privilege and a very, very special time. So I'm glad we can talk about all things sweat and talk about toxic burdens. And I think that for all the viewers and the listeners out there, Courtney had a really great point. When we talk about sweat, I think one aspect of this podcast is to look into the avenues of why sweat is so important, simply because there are times when we take supplements or herbs or vitamins and minerals, and we are trying to activate, like, let's say, our immune system. We're also trying to use the herbs to go and attack a toxicity. But what happens when the toxicity or the infection or the microbe is so deep within your tissue that it may be hard for the bloodstream to reach it? What happens if the capillaries, I'm serious, cannot reach down into the tissues that are so infected with, let's say, a parasitic cyst or a parasitic larvae? And that's why they run. Infections like to run in a very, very stealthy way. And so one thing that I've seen work so well in getting past those barriers, like the hiding effect of the infections and those hidden toxins, is to use certain types of frequency medicine, frequency devices. And I think that will be the wave of the future. I know it will be the wave of the future. And I got some cool stuff I need to talk to you about, Courtney, about this device. One of my friends went to Poland, and they're asking me to come to Poland next month to come look at this new device. But I'm like, I don't think I can come all the way to Poland to do that. So with all that to say, for everybody out there, it is impossible for us to actually avoid every toxin in our life. And if we live in the world we live in today, you're going to look at, of course, we have toxins from, namely, our water, the air we breathe, the foods we eat. I mean, if you look on anything on Instagram or TikTok and you read anything about health, I mean, every single thing has a toxin in it. But now, of course, we're having more radiation, EMFs. We're having the effects of not only something that's technical, like an electrical device, but then you have to think about the toxicities that come from people. So when you add all of these together, like we love to talk here in the Ancient Health Podcast, we like to talk about how everything is like mind, body, soul, spirit. and how things are connected in unison. So is there a way that we can take all of those toxicity levels into, consideration, and what is something that you can use or you can use in your life that would actually help you cleanse those areas of your life? And that's a big question. I know it's a lot to talk about in just one episode, but as a practitioner, you can't just look at one avenue. I can't just say, oh, it's just all biochemistry. I have to see how the biochemistry affects the emotions, and then I have to see how the emotions affects the organs, and the organs affect the joints and the body and the structure. So with all of that, I think one of the biggest things we are facing today is how can we gently and safely, effectively cleanse without going to a Hertz reaction? And Court, sorry if I went overboard on that, but this is the task we have as practitioners here in the world.
Yeah, that's such great groundwork. And it really does. And I actually especially like that we're even talking about toxic relationships too, because that is something that kind of we put in like a different bucket, I feel like, because we feel like, well, that's relational. That's not our physical bodies. And that's probably, well, that'll be a podcast for another day. Maybe we can tag team on that one too. But I think what's so interesting is that toxins, a lot of times, especially in mainstream medicine, are not looked at as the driver of disease. Like we see people getting diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. We see children that have developmental delays. They have behavioral problems. And no pediatrician, general practitioner, or specialist, for the most part, is ever going to say this is a toxin issue. And I think this is grossly overlooked because we know toxins are an influence. In fact, we have hundreds of pounds of chemicals being brought in per person every day in the United States. Our food supply is so heavily contaminated, y'all. Even organic food. I know I buy organic food too, but all of our farmland is now cross-contaminated with glyphosate because of water runoff. And then if you even look into our water supply, if you don't have a water filter, you're getting bromine, you're getting chloramine, you're getting fluoride, you're getting all of these chemicals every single day that are just being absorbed in your body. And the problem is that there is a burden on your liver. There's a burden on all the detoxification organs, the kidneys, and we'll break some of these down because I actually want to give you the floor on that. But all this to say that toxins really are a threat to our health. And if you are facing a health challenge right now and you're listening to this, you have to consider toxins as either a large part of the puzzle or some part of it. Hands down, I will tell you, toxins are playing a role. Like they're playing a role in some of the things that I'm dealing with. Go ahead.
No, I love the way you put it, because, when you said that anybody goes to their primary care doctor, you're never really considered having toxins as a diagnosis. And so when we look at somebody saying, well, I'm just tired or I'm fatigued, and maybe I don't sleep really well, those are really big signs of toxicities. But when you even go into the avenue of like consistent skin issues, dandruff, scalp issues, even gunky eyes or itchy ears or extreme earwax, inflamed ridges around the nail bed, we would think these are just things happen as we get older. But now you're seeing that these are the body's attempt to get rid of toxicities, and it's working its way out in the way the body knows best. But now when we go to any, usually most practitioners, they're not going to look at those things and think it's anything wrong, right, Court? They're going to be like, oh, just clean your ears out. But now it's even worse, like even in the practice. I don't know how many cases of eczema I've had in the last 3 years. I mean, it has been unreal. And the amount of lung infections from toxins. So I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit overboard. We got to get into this good outline. But Court, I'm sorry to cut you off if I did, but let's talk about some extra toxicities.
Yeah, I mean, this is okay. The earwax thing is kind of wild to me because I have one of my children. I love cleaning her ears, but I'm like, why are you so waxy? So this is now bringing to light some things that I need to consider. Okay, this is like a total tangent, but you know what? The mom in me, I'm like, oh, let me, get in there and clean that stuff out. So anyway, okay, back to toxins. So, okay, let's maybe just, let me ask you this. So we now have identified that there are toxins everywhere. Okay. So you can get toxins, you're getting heavy metals from vaccines, you're going to get heavy metal exposure from, I mean, there's aluminum sprayed in the skies. We could go through like all the different things. You're getting herbicides, insecticides, pesticides that are all on the food, all in the groundwater. You got pharmaceutical drug residue that's also in the groundwater. There are so many toxins. Where do these toxins go? Because this is important to understand in relation to the symptoms and the diagnosis that you have, is what the toxins are doing to your body. So maybe break down what these different detoxification organs are, and then talk about like how it is that the toxins are influencing their inability to do their job well.
That's a great question. And I say this, so hopefully, Cord, if I start going on tangent, you need to rein me back in. But I would say the symphony of organs, basically in a nutshell, in Eastern medicine, they would say that when you get a toxicity in your body, you're usually going to try to find out certain ways to get them out, namely your colon, right? Your spleen, your kidneys, your gallbladder, your lymph nodes and your lymph system, the second layer of your skin, probably all layers of your skin. And when you put all of those together, remember that all the toxicities that are coming into your body, they have to get into these organs, and the organs have to make a coordinated effort in unison to actually detoxify you. And Courtney made a great point about how emotions or a toxic relationship can come into play. Now, I'm not trying to go on this tangent, but when we talk about toxicities, like let's say I do get in touch with pesticides, herbicides, and they go into my lungs. So they're sprayed everywhere here, like even in Nashville area, and your body will breathe them in. So the lungs in Eastern medicine are associated with the large intestine. They're paired meridians because your lungs spend all day detoxifying you. They actually mystify and actually take your toxins from your skin in the dermal layer, from what your lymph nodes have been trying to purge out of your bloodstream, getting all the toxins out. And it tries to push it through your breath and pushes it out. But your body also uses it in unison with your large intestine to help you bowel movement, poop out the toxins as well. But this is the point. You have all these toxicities coming in, and then they're trying to be together. But let's say you're in a very bad state emotionally. This is the hard part. Because when you think about the lungs in Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine, they'll say that the lungs have a lot to do with your grief, unresolved grief, a fright, having a fear of death. But let's say, how does it affect your body? Let's say the toxicities come into your body and you say, well, I'm just going to breathe in glyphosates and pesticides. But why is it that one person can take that and usually just take it through their lungs, push it through their lymph nodes, and then get it into their liver. And their liver just starts to filter it out, gets into their fecal matter, and they poop it out. But the other person holds on to it. It's because in that essence, the lungs have become weak because it was not able to resolve the unresolved trauma. And so the body will hold on to the pesticides and glyphosates more. And then you start to see this activation syndrome where, okay, glyphosates, pesticides come in, herbicides, as Courtney was talking about. And then let's say when you're a kid, you have mycoplasma. You had pneumonia in your lungs. Oh, I had pneumonia a long time ago, and I had strep a long time ago in my lungs. Remember, I had bronchitis for 3 years straight, and then it went away. Did it really go away? Why did it stick in the lungs? Could that trauma have allowed the organ to build up the toxicity? And this is how entailed it could be. Then you go out and you breathe these pesticides in, and all of a sudden you become very sick from it. Mm-hmm. So the point of this is that the symphony of the organs trying to work together to detoxify you, all these toxicities, is very, very heavily dependent upon the type of relationships you have in your life, the type of work you do, the type of rest that you should have in your life. So when we talk about the toxicities in life and what we're needing to do, and these organs work together, it has everything to do on how well you rest and how much you take care of yourself and how well you see yourself and how much you value yourself. So with that, though, the toxicities have to move through a certain pattern. And this is where it's leading up to. So, Court, follow it. I hope I didn't lead everybody astray.
You're great.
When you have all these organs working together and they're making a concerned effort to try to basically make sure that everything's clean, one of the biggest things that you'll find is that the body will use the largest organ. It's going to use it as your skin. So when people say, what happens when it comes into your lungs? It tries to make its way through the lungs, and your body will actually push it at many times to the lymph nodes. And lymph nodes have these lymphocytes, and these little cells go in and go to the toxins or the microbes and try to kill them off and dissolve them. And they make their way through the lymph nodes. And every little lymph node station is a little tag. It's like when you go to the grocery store and they beep and they tag your product. That's what the lymph nodes do. And then the lymph makes its way into certain areas. Some go back into the bloodstream, some go into the liver, some make their way into the spleen, and the spleen will filter this lymph out. Now, with this, you have to make sure that your colon and your liver and your kidney are working properly. Because if the infection is getting to these filtration devices, they can get stuck. And when they get stuck, it could be from an emotion. It could be from a trauma. It could be from the overload of just heavy toxins all the time, like pesticides, glyphosates, herbicides. It could be from being in a house that was full of mold. Now, the hard part is after these organs build up, they build up a lot of toxins. You can look at reports, and I have patients that will bring in reports of their kidneys, and literally they'll show images of their kidneys, and the little tubes in their kidneys are basically backed up. They'll have little granules, they'll have stones. I can't tell you how many times, Court, like I'll put someone on a quick kidney detox, and they say they'll go urinate, and they say, man, it was like sand. Not kidney stones per se, but like sand and gritty. With this, what happens, this is my question for everybody out there, what happens when you get to a point that this toxic overload and this burden's coming into your body and you go, okay, well, you can take a lot of supplementation and that will help purge the colon and purge the liver. And I'm all agreeing with that. I love enemas. I love coffee enemas. Courtney loves coffee enemas. We love colonics. And I think you should do those things to help clean them out. But where do they go? If they cannot get fully filtered out through your kidneys, your liver, the colon, they'll make your way into your tissue. And they'll push their way into your tissue if you're not careful. And what is the thing going out there, Court, now? What? Arthritis, right? We're seeing a heavier amount of rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune disease in your own joints, even in kids, right? Kids are having this. The highest amount of eczema, the highest amount of rashes and, pimples and breakouts. And the tissue, the skin, your biggest organ, serves now as the reservoir because your body knows that I'm going to do my best to filter out every single thing I can through my second layer, the second and top layer. And that's where a lot of your sweat glands live, your melanocytes, where you create melanin to have that great tan. That's where this all lives. But your body's using this avenue to push it out. So if the infection is deep within the tissue and it's hiding or pushed down because of the heavy burden, you're going to have to find a way not only to clean those organs out, to get the unison back together, but now the infections are trapped into the tissue. Now, it's not saying if you clean the organs out, you can get and pull them out, because I see it all the time. And you do too, Court. You see people like, you suggest something to them like, now I'm pooping better than I've ever pooped before. But there are times when the joints get so inflamed or the infections or the toxins get so deep that you're going to have to do a lot to knock those things loose. And one of the biggest things I've found with toxicity is now they're showing that there's coherence between toxicity and tissue. And it sounds a fancy word. It's not. It's basically when the toxicities, the way they're derived, and Court, you made a good point about this. If you made something that had a pesticide or you made a man-made toxicity, all those chemicals, they act as magnets per se. And those chemicals, there's never a time when you have a chemical that doesn't have some kind of side symptom, right? But they are served as magnets to certain types of tissue. And that is the sad thing about it, that these toxins, basically they're formulated, but they also are magnetically drawn in many ways to certain types of tissue, certain receptor sites on your cells. So you have to go investigate what type of tissue is being attached. So the coherence is they get attached and there's a magnetic bond, an electrical frequency bond. So not only do you have to use chemistry, biochemistry, herbs, supplements, vitamins, minerals to help initiate an immune response to help clean them out, but you're going to have to find a way to break that magnetic, that electrical bond between the toxicity and the cells. Now, it's not fancy talk. I'm just saying that's what happens because why? I mean, that's why they make a pesticide, because the pesticide is engineered to stick to certain types of cells within the insect to do what? Smother mitochondrial activity, basically suffocate the cell. So we push this into our bodies, and then we have radiation, EMFs that exemplify the whole avenue of these chemicals, and then you have a perfect storm. And I just went on a whole soapbox on that, Court, but
I think no, you did a great job.
Yeah.
I think that was perfect. And what I'm taking away from this, and maybe if you're listening, just this will summarize it for you, is that what Dr. Motley was saying is that in order to detoxify well, you have to have healthy systems in your body. It's not just one organ that you can feed a bunch of nutrients and take care of all of it. All of these different chemical and toxic threats are all specific in how they attach to cell receptors, where they like to go. Most of them love fat, love fatty tissue. This is why we see a lot of degeneration in older populations with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things like that, because these heavy metals make their way to the brain because they're lipophilic and they love fat. But all of this, to essentially summarize this, if you don't have healthy systems and organs, right? All these different tissues and organelles all working together well, all of these toxins will be funneled or shuffled out into tissues and they get deep within your body. They are not mobilized well. And then we have this accumulation effect where we have repeated exposures and it just builds and builds and builds until it really does paralyze the mitochondria. It affects your immune system. You start seeing autoimmune disorders. Your gut stays inflamed all the time. You become a breeding ground of dysbiotic bacteria and parasites. So now you've got chronic infections. And so this cascade happens. The problem that I feel like the biggest issue is that people get in those positions and then all of a sudden they're like, well, great. Maybe if I've identified I have a toxin issue, I don't have a way of getting the toxins out because energetically, my cells can't help me do it. Like I can take all the nutrients. I can do all of the liver support and gallbladder support, but I'm so weak that I can't utilize the nutrients well enough to mobilize, to really activate some of the toxins and carry them out. And so you see people trying different cleanses and binders and nutrients, and they can all be helpful, but I feel like it gets people maybe a little bit better, but then they kind of plateau and they're like, gosh, I can't get all the way better. And it's because these toxins are so hard to go after and they compromise every single system. So you bring to light a really good point, which is the skin, because a lot of times we don't think of the skin as being a detoxification organ or a pathway, and it is. And when we talk about toxins being buried deep within the tissues, it would make sense that the quickest and easiest way to get them out is through the sweat glands. So if we can activate that in a way that is effective, then all the other areas, your gut, your liver, your gallbladder, you can bypass those to a degree, right? You can use the lymphatic system. You can use the exit pathway of sweating to get some of the toxic burden off your body so that when you do start taking the nutrients, you do start doing, some coffee enemas and things like that, your body can utilize the tools you're giving them. The problem is everybody's going for the tools that their body doesn't have the ability to carry. It's like handing a child a 50-pound dumbbell and it's like, okay, this is going to make you strong. Well, if they can't get it off the ground, it's not going to make them strong. They're just going to be struggling. And that's what we're doing. I feel like in a lot of ways, people are spinning their wheels because they're trying a lot of things and they're not getting results. So I hope that helps summarize a little bit for you guys, the toxins, the toxic threat, the different organs that are associated with it. The emotional piece is definitely something that has to be considered. And then really teeing up this concept of sweating as really, to me, like a priority for people that have a heavy toxic burden, like this being the pathway to target first, because I think that it's going to mobilize the stuff that's creating the biggest burden on the body.
Oh, I totally, you said it in a nutshell.
I think that's great. I just kind of whipped.
That's great because I think
okay.
One thing I think that we'll go to the next one, but I want to touch on that because you made a really good point about, skin and sweating and the constant bombardment. And when we talk about the constant bombardment, one of the things that we always talk about, like in Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine world, is the presence of like mucus. And when we have, like you say, a stalemate, when you have organs that are not functioning really well, like, for instance, such a good point. If you took something for your liver, like if I took Schisandra or if I took like Philanthus or something, like those are great for the liver. And it does clean up the liver. But I've noticed sometimes with patients that I would work with them and I would give them certain nutrients. And when I would dose them out, it would take them sometimes they'll dose for a high amount. But one thing is that I've always found that with the technique I use, I'd find like one of the supplements was not working well because they would have a toxic overload of a fungus. And the point that you're making rings true because that toxic overload is usually in the form of a film, like a plaque or a biofilm or mucus. And when you have a slowing down of the organs, those organs will start to create mucus because the microbes, like you said, the infections get in there and start to create goo. And that's hard. And so you're going to have to find a way, like through sweating, to help break up some of the mucus in the body. Because the mucus doesn't just go towards the gut. It'll go to the lungs. It'll go to the brain. It'll go to the sinuses. It goes to the joints. And biofilms is one of the biggest things that I see creates the biggest hindrance when we talk, like you said, to actually absorbing nutrients from your mitochondria actually working. So we're going to have to talk about ways to help break up some biofilm. And this is what we're going into. So, Courtney has the next good point, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but I had to throw that about their biofilms in.
Yeah, biofilms are that you're so right. I mean, they're huge, and honestly, like they're so sneaky, and they hold on to so much garbage in your body, and they just stay there. It's like it's hard if you can't bust up biofilms, like you're going to be chasing your tail in a lot of ways. And so, if you're like, what is a biofilm? We have a few other episodes, I think, where we kind of break that down. And so maybe we can find those and link those in the show notes for you, so that because that is a whole deep dive right there too. But I'm going to like get like super nerdy for a moment, because I think that this is a really cool study, and I think that it will help clarify and make sense of what we're talking about as sweat being a preferred pathway for toxins. So there was this Canadian physician that did a study, and it was called the BUS study. And it's basically they took blood, urine, and sweat from a population that they were evaluating toxins, mostly a lot of heavy metals. And so they were basically putting these people, they were testing these three different components in all of the population, and trying to see, what showed up in their blood, what showed up in their urine, and what showed up in their sweat. So all of these different bodily fluids. And then they were looking at things like cadmium, nickel, lead, arsenic, copper, cobalt, all of these things that we see, they're in our water supply. Like I already talked about like where all these things are. A lot of times we don't think about it. A lot of these things are found in your cookware. I mean, it's kind of wild. Like they're found in your cleaning products. So you just have to be really careful. I mean, I think it was like lead was found in women's toothpaste. That kind of went viral like a year or so ago. So we think stuff like lead and cadmium and nickel, we're like, oh, that's like, maybe if you're a factory worker in a workshop or something. Like, no, this stuff is everywhere. And the problem is that we're using it over and over again. Like, right, if you're cooking and your pots and pans have PFAs and they've got BPAs, or you're drinking out of water bottles with BPA. BPA is a huge chemical, endocrine disruptor and chemical threat to the body. So what happened is, in looking at these three different bodily fluids, they found that they didn't really find a whole lot in serum, in blood, right? Because when you're exposed to toxins, your body very intelligently knows that these things can't just float around in your body. Like they need to go somewhere because they're highly destructive to your cells. So your body will try to put them in fat. This is why we see a lot of people that have a lot of extra fat accumulation have high levels of toxic burden, right? Because your body is basically having to expand fat cells to be able to stuff the toxins into. Like that is crazy. That's like an actual fact. So your fat cells will actually expand and replicate and get bigger because of the toxic burden on your body. So if you are trying to lose a lot of weight, your body's mobilizing fat. I won't even go down the whole, with a lot of the fat loss stuff that's going on right now, but this was my point, is that you've got to address the toxins, because as soon as your body starts mobilizing the fat, you start releasing the toxins in the bloodstream, which becomes a real problem for all of the systems of your body. So they found that they did not see a high level of toxins in blood serum. Now, when they looked at urine, same thing, like looking at urine metabolites, they weren't finding a whole lot. But when they looked at sweat, so sweat being, again, a detox pathway, we don't think a lot of times that sweat is a detox pathway, but they interestingly found that there was a high level of these toxins that were being released. And I think that this is fascinating because sweat also, when you look at it, you have to look at what's initiating the sweat. Because if you want to detoxify well, you can't be in a stress state. So like I just got done working out. I was sweating buckets because I live in South Carolina. It's humid all the time. But if you were to test my sweat post workout versus if I'm in a sauna and I'm in parasympathetic, my body's in rest and digest. Now my body is mobilizing. It's actually detoxifying on a different level. Now you can also look at the type of sauna that you're using too, right? Because again, if using a conventional sauna, your body is in a very stressed state because it's at a very high temperature. That's what's inducing the sweat process. If you're using infrared, you're at a much lower temperature. You're not stressing the body, but you're using infrared, you're using light and heat to be able to draw out the sweating process that's going to mobilize some of those toxins. So I'm kind of segueing us into talking about how to generate a sweat that can decrease your toxic burden, that can mobilize toxins buried within your tissues the most effectively. And hands down, like bar none, infrared sauna is the way to go for that. And I think the more compromised you are, you have to be highly selective with how you support your body because your body's going to put the brakes on everything. Like you said, a lot of people can't even handle a lot of herbs and supplementation because they don't have enough energy, right? Like you have to be able to build energy to carry out detoxification. You can't just like force your body to do something when it just doesn't have the capability to do it. So sweating, to me, you have to be able to do it so gently with the body that it doesn't feel more of a burden. It's already taxed. We're already stressed. We're already underslept. Like our bodies are under recovered, we're undernourished, and then we add in all the extra toxins. Now, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer because I do realize that this is like that's the direction it's going. We're gonna get to this. I'm teeing up the solution for us right now.
Man, I don't know if I'm feeling really good over here, Court.
I know.
Just kidding. It's perfect. No, it's great. Keep going. Keep going. I love it.
No. So anyway, this is all to say, guys. Like, we have toxins. Again, I'm going to summarize because I know we're covering so much ground here, but heavy metals and toxins are in our everyday environment, in our lifestyle. You've got to be really prudent. You've got to be so diligent in evaluating your environment, from the things that you're bringing in, the food that you're cooking, what you're cooking on, what you're putting in your body, the water that you're drinking, the people that are coming into your house, into your life. Like, all of those things have to be evaluated so that you can have good barrier and a good defense system against it. Secondarily, you've got to be able to say, what is the most effective way to detoxify my body that supports its healing as well as the detoxification? So it's not necessarily throwing a ton of supplements at it if it's already compromised. It's how can I be supportive of healing? And the most gentle way is to really tackle the drainage pathway of sweat and then to use infrared. So I would actually love to ask you about this, Dr. Botley, because I know that you work with tons of patients they've got viral loads, infections. I mean, they're very, very compromised. And so you have to be very delicate. Like, you've got to be incredibly, like, surgically precise with how you're helping people heal, because energetically their bodies aren't capable of doing a whole lot. You're working with very few raw materials, and you've got to be able to get things lined up where you can actually start building momentum for them to detoxify. So have you seen do you have any examples where you've seen somebody that you know has a high chemical burden utilize something like an infrared sauna to be able to mobilize some of those toxins and get them relief?
Completely, yes. Namely, I could, like, this last week, I mean, I had 2 patients that heavy strep load, and they had more mercury from their old mercury fillings that was in the head. Now, you can take things that will help drain metal toxicity out, and you could use different things to help with the strep, which I would, totally give them. But one thing that I have found, like, I have a small infrared light that I use that I have here. And when we use a light on these patients and they have their own saunas or they do infrared, what they would usually come back and tell me is like, Doc, I pretty much detoxified after you told me how many segments during the week I should do for how long. And the reason being, like, when you have a toxicity like a metal, or you have an infection like strep, for instance, they talk about cadmium or lead, or talk about aluminum. Remember, guys, these are all coming from different sources. Like, you could live by a factory when you're a kid, and you could have, they could have created batteries, and the cadmium went down into the groundwater, and you drank the groundwater from the tap, or took baths in it all your life. When you have that kind of chemical toxicity, remember, they have half-lives. Those elements have half-lives. They stick around for a very long time, and they attach to certain receptor sites. Aluminum and even lead. Lead will stick to what we call the glutamate receptors in your body, the GAD, which inactivates them, which makes glutamate go higher, which means you're hyperexcited. Just those, like we're talking about, is as the metals stick in the tissue, like Courtney was talking about, with the patients, we'll get them on a certain realm, because the point is the penetration of the light source. You have to have something that can go deep or shallow into the tissue to actually help loosen up the toxicity. And whenever I have used my light source or told them to do a certain amount, usually I would say almost 100% of the time, they will come back and I will tell them, this is what I tell them, Corey. I'm like, okay, you have it all on the base of your neck. I said, I promise you, you're going to have a congested throat. You're going to have itchy ears, and you're probably going to have gunk come out of your nose for at least 3 days. Okay. Then after that, maybe the next 2 days after that, you're probably going to feel some ruffling in your chest, like you're having little flutters. And so, bar none, every person that usually gets to work down here, they're like, it literally followed that route. And so whenever you find light source, this is the nerd part about it. When the infections or the toxins is in that patient's head, right? And I'm evaluating it, I have to usually hold the light source back away from them or close to even get it to respond to the body with some kinesiology. And that's the beauty of having a good sauna, because you can have far infrared or you can have very low infrared, because the body will take the infrared light signals basically, and it uses either it's basically from a good distance or short, or the wavelength of the actual infrared. That's why it's important to have a good product or a good light source, because it disassociates the infections and the metals from the tissue. Remember, I told you about the coherent bond, is that there is an electrical bond that's happening between the infections or the toxins in the tissue. And you need specific light wavelengths to actually do what? To disassociate and break those bonds. So if with the patient, when I evaluate them, I'll say, okay, you need to go do an infrared for 30 minutes, 2 times a week. And the reason being, I try to tell them like a nice, gentle approach, is because infrared will detoxify you quite heavily. People can go into heavy, heavy detoxes if they do it too much. So I guess that's my example. Whenever I use this, anytime, especially bladder infections on ladies, UTIs that don't go away, right? If they ever had issues around the lymph nodes, around the chest, around the breast area, even they always have a throat that's always a congested cough or hack, I will use light source. Number one thing I do, red light therapy on those areas, first thing. And if you disassociate those infections and toxins from the tissue, then I give the binders. Then the binders work even better. And they'll start to flush. And that's how almost, I think every single patient, I use red light therapy on them. I think that nowadays, when we get into the red light therapy and we're talking about saunas or we're talking about devices, I think we think, oh, it's just helping for mitochondria. I'm like, we do not understand the healing effect of cleaning out infections and toxicities with it. And, one thing I like about a sauna is this, like in my realm, I have to find the angle, literally the angle, the length and the distance on the body to actually help disassociate that coherent bond. But if you're in an area where there's many light sources, if it's covering you and it's bouncing off the walls inside a sauna, you're usually going to cover a lot of ground. You're usually going to have all the wavelengths and the angles you need. So depending on which source you get and what type of wavelength, I've seen individuals that literally have had UTIs for 20 years, like use red light therapy. And then I had a lady come in and won't ever name names. I get pictures of things all the time in my emails, honestly, through our whatever, the HIPAA compliant. I had a lady show me this big white piece of film, and it was probably like 3 inches long, and it was white and it was wide. And she's like, "Hey, I just urinated this out. Is that normal?" And I was like, "You urinated that out?" And she's like, and it looked like a biofilm. It was like she literally urinated biofilm.
Wow.
But the way we did it was I did red light therapy for 3 visits in a row right over her bladder. And get this, I hate to say it, she had one of the worst sore throats because she finally dumped her strep. Somehow cleaning out her bladder gave her body permission for the lymph nodes in her throat to actually detoxify. And you know what's even crazier is that I'm going down the rabbit hole. You can have a kidney, and the kidneys have, let's say they have these ACE receptors, the same type of receptors that COVID attacks, and they're in your lungs and they're in your esophagus. So cleaning out her bladder basically took the stress off those receptors, and her lungs started to heal and her throat started to heal. And just from red light. And you think, why? Wow. Because everything I gave her, everything I was giving her, I love it. I love that it works. Uva Ursi, I was giving her some dandelion. I gave her a little bit of cranberry, and she'd say, "Well, it works for a little bit, doc, but it wasn't getting down to the nitty gritty of it." And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just try to do red light at different angles and such. And it was what she needed. So not everybody can take tons of supplements and herbs. Maybe you just need red light therapy. So those are my examples. I have a lot more, but
that's so good. Yeah. It's like kind of mind blowing to think how effective light can be, because I think a lot of times we just think, gosh, our symptoms have been around for so long. You're telling me something this simple is going to not only eliminate, but heal like the tissue, the organ. And it does. I mean, we see it over and over again. The first time that I was introduced to infrared saunas was, oh my gosh, probably 10 years ago. And it was because I had a family member, my brother-in-law, and he was diagnosed with cancer in his like mid to late 30s. And they got a Sunlighten sauna, and they were told like, hey, this could be a really good therapy for your body, for your immune system. And I was like, I've never even heard of this. And so we ended up getting one. And I'll spare you all the details, but it wasn't long after that I've talked, you guys know, I had breast implant illness. I had a lot of different issues after I got my breast implants, got them out. But getting our sauna was the most effective tool in helping me detoxify, because I went from having probably like, a normal toxic burden. I wasn't miserable, didn't have any issues, but I definitely had some like thyroid stuff going on, some gut stuff going on. Then I got the implants, which we know are just full of all kinds of metals and plasticizers and things like that, which was just, it's there, it's in your body. Like of course it's breaking down, of course it's activating your immune system. Like it's suppressing all kinds of different things and creating just catastrophic, like downstream effects. But I utilized the sauna just like my brother-in-law did, which he had tumors on his brain and his lungs. Like it was very, very bad. He did a lot of other things, but he got a Sunlighten sauna, and I got introduced to Sunlighten at the same time. And I was like, we need to get one too. Like I'm very sick. Like I need to be able to help. And I didn't even understand the technology at the time, but I could see it working for somebody else that was also very sick and compromised. And he was getting good results and was also doing a lot of other things as well. But sauna therapy was critical in his healing because he was not doing the traditional stuff. He wasn't doing chemo. He wasn't doing any of that. It was all natural. And he's great even to this day, like no cancer in his body. It's unbelievable, like complete miracle. But I started using Sunlighten. And so this is where, guys, I want you to know, just from our own personal experience, I have a Sunlighten sauna. Dr. Motley, Dr. Axe, like we all love Sunlighten, and we love their technology specifically because it works. It worked for me. It's worked for family members. It's worked for Dr. Motley's patients. And their technology really utilizes and captures this light therapy, and it raises the core body temperature, uses those different wavelengths and frequencies, right? The near, mid, and far. All three are necessary to get to the deepest levels of tissues. You're getting, near infrared, right, is great. And we see a lot of people with handheld panels and stuff like that. Those are all helpful, but it's also only getting skin layer deep. If you want to penetrate deep in the tissues, you need to be able to utilize a technology that allows those light frequencies to get deep into the cell. That's where a lot of the problems are. So this solo carbon technology that they have utilizes all three wavelengths to get deep within the tissues to elevate the core body temperature, which then allows this mobilization of toxins and elicits a sweating response. And they do it. Now, this is what's crazy, guys, because I talked about this earlier. It's so important to realize when you have a high toxic burden and your body is stressed, you cannot be in a conventional sauna over 200 degrees, sweating your brains out, thinking that you're getting cadmium and nickel and lead and all of these things that are creating catastrophic symptoms in your body, because your body's really stressed. And that degree of temperature, like that's not getting in the cell. It's using outside air to just make you sweat, the outside temperature to make you sweat. Infrared, right? Remember I said it penetrates for utilizing three different wavelengths deep within the tissues of the body, elevates the core body temperature. So the air gets warm, but it's not hot. Like the first few times I used the sauna, I was like, wow, is it supposed to get warmer? Because like it's warm, but I feel like what I was used to in a sauna was just like really hot. Like you get in and you're like, whoa, this like it kind of smacks you in the face. This is like very pleasant. It's warm, but I'm telling you, and it's interesting too, your body kind of learns. It took me probably 2 weeks of utilizing it in short lengths of time to get my body trained to start sweating. Within now like 5 minutes, I mean, I can be sweating buckets and it's like 112 degrees. Like it's not that hot. But my body now is used to being able to use that pathway to start eliminating toxins. And I'll tell you guys, in my personal experience, like I was able to recover from breast implant illness so much quicker by utilizing infrared. Like it was my non-negotiable, because I knew I was like, I have all these toxins now from having these things in my body for 5 years that I have to be able to get out. And so I feel like if you're that person that's looking for something to invest in your health, I don't even think you have to, necessarily have cancer or breast implant illness or anything else. It's the world we live in. And if you really want to take your health seriously, be able to help your body on a really therapeutic level, infrared saunas are like one of the top 5 things. Like outside of water filtration, like gotta filter your water, because you gotta stop the influx of toxins. But utilizing an infrared sauna on a regular basis, because you can do it in such a gentle way. I use it for the kids. Like I know I'm like going deep on a rabbit hole, but I use it for the children too, because it elevates that core body temperature a few degrees, which if you have chronic viral infections, this is a game changer, because if your immune system is so beat down that it can't attack the virus, or the virus is just buried deep somewhere, then you're never going to be able to clear it. You're just going to stay at that low level baseline of efficacy of your immune system. But by elevating that core body temperature, you kind of emulate a false fever. And that allows the body to start killing off all of the disease cells that keep replicating and keeping your immune system beaten down. So for the kids, when they start getting sick, I'll put them in the sauna, because it's not going to overheat them. It's not going to stress their body. And they can do, 6 minutes at a time. And I'll do it 2 to 3 times a day with them. And I notice so quickly that the second they start getting a cold, I'll put them in there. They love it, because it's, it's got lights, you got all these colors. They have all this chromotherapy now. Like it is really cool, and it's very relaxing. Like it just, their technology is really incredible. And to me, it's like having a mini spa in your house, which, if you're a mom, listen, we ain't got no time to be going to a spa. I'm like, I barely have time to wash my clothes or replace the socks that have holes in them. So I'm sure as heck not making it to a spa. So I'm like, all the self-care I would spend if I had time to go do those things, I'm going to invest in my own sauna. And then I can just, at night when the kids go to bed, I can just go sit in it. And I was actually talking to Emily Morrow, who's another practitioner, a great friend of mine. And she was saying how this was so effective for her healing. And she actually loved doing it at night. It really helped her circadian rhythm and her sleep improve, which, I mean, how many of us have sleep problems? Like everybody, I feel like, it's like hard to go to sleep or you wake up. So, I mean, I just really went all in on the sauna there.
No, I think that one of the biggest things that you said, like, I mean, it was great, because one of the things that stuck out to me was when you said you trained your body to sweat. And when they talk about the technology of going to a regular sauna or trying to see how hot or how sweaty you can get, one of the complaints I usually get is like, Doc, I don't really sweat. I've had people tell me I don't really sweat. And that's the beauty of using technology when you have the near, far, and mid. It's because those wavelengths are directed to, they say, help with your mitochondria. So if you have insomnia issues, or you have low energy, or you can't get your body to actually pick up the pace, remember that Courtney made a great point about intracellular viruses. What is the tissues that a lot of viruses, and now they're even saying intracellular microscopic parasites go after? They go after your mitochondria. And the mitochondria get damaged. And so your mitochondria is supposed to, in a fancy way, try to create all these ATP molecules to help give you energy. And if they are actually damaged within your dermal layer in dermal cells, and you have this deficiency of energy within that area, you can actually have them also, the viruses and the parasites, damage your sweat glands. And so people will not do what? Have enough energy because their mitochondria is being damaged by the viruses, and they won't sweat. One of the biggest things they used to say that people won't sweat is because people have certain forms of hepatitis viruses do what? Damage sweat glands, damage sebaceous glands, damage what? Your melanin. So you'll have people with vitiligo. You'll have people with all these spots. So then you're saying, how could I sweat? And why can't I sweat? So it's not the temperature, like Courtney just said. It's how I can use wavelengths to disassociate and penetrate in specific wavelength patterns to help not only clean up the mitochondria and heal it, but what can also do what? Activate your immune system to go after the infection. And that's why Courtney starts sweating. It's because now her sweat glands are healed up. Now the viruses and the intracellular parasites start to leave. And so your glands go, this is the craziest thing. When your kids have infections, I love it that when you say when your kid gets a cold, they always say in Chinese medicine, the lungs control the skin. And so what that is saying is that your lungs take all the moisture that is filled with toxins and breathe it out. So your skin depends heavily on your lung function. If you get a cold or a virus in your lungs and they become subdued and low, your skin's going to take the toxic load to try to push it out when the lungs can't do it. So you better go do an infrared because your lungs will benefit from it, of course. But that's a beautiful thing. When the kids get sick, it's they're like, well, I can't have enough energy to breathe it out. Help the skin.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about Sunlighten. And when you have 3 ranges of wavelength patterns, I like it because I think of everything in certain patterns of like how light hits the body. And like whenever I do the techniques court, it's like I'll hold something real close to the body. I get no signal, biofeedback signal. I go about 4 inches off the body, get nothing. Oh, I go 7 inches off the body on their body. It works on their skin, on the receptors. And we often forget that our cells have infrared receptors. Yes, we have infrared receptors on our cells. We have ultraviolet receptors on our cells. How could we ever notice it if we didn't have it? All I'm saying is like she makes a great point. Whenever we find a whole conglomerate of different types of wavelengths, you're going to touch a lot of aspects within your cells: mitochondria, cell detoxification, and sweating capability. Overall, one thing I think about the infrareds on it is its effect on the lungs. The lungs heal the best with this. So we want everybody out there, like when you look into it, I can't imagine like how much our body has to go through. Like, I mean, seriously, our kid, you know, your kids go to school and literally they're around pottery, or they're around, you know, now kids, girls these days, younger, wear cosmetics, or they're wearing, you know, art supplies. I mean, how much lead is in the body? How much lead is out there? If you've ever had dental amalgams, if you've ever had, you know, you working with a cell phone, I mean, the amount of nickel that comes from a cell phone. I'm saying all these things make their way into the body, and your cells have to do something with it. But again, we're not trying to be downers on this podcast. What we're trying to do is like say, hey, there are ways that you can use something that doesn't, like Courtney was talking about, like if you sit in there and you can relax. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Like I've had people, I don't know, Court, have you had that? I've had people like literally will call me and they'll be like, yeah, I'm just sitting in here in my infrared right now watching a podcast or something like that. And I'm like, I mean, kudos. That's why, like, I would do it every day if I could, you know, but I'm like, Court, I've been running around a lot too much, but it's a really great and safe way to actually help clean up the body.
That's so crazy. I didn't even think about the sweat glands because there are a lot of people that struggle with sweating. And I didn't really understand that mechanism until you just described it because I didn't. It took me a while. Like it would sometimes take me the whole session to really start to generate a good sweat. And then and they told me that when I kind of did like a consultation and I was talking with them. I mean, this was like a very long time ago. I've been a Sunlighten fan. We've had multiple. It's funny. We actually sold the last couple houses that we've lived in, the people that were buying the house, because you can break these saunas down and take them with you, which I was like, yeah, like taking the sauna. And they were like, no, like I don't, we want to keep that. We'd love to buy it from you. Both buyers of the last two homes we've lived in wanted the sauna. And then I was able to tell them about it because they were like, they just thought like, oh, this is a cool sauna. And I was like, oh, no, let me tell you what you're getting here. And it was really cool once they kind of understood it. They were like, yeah, we absolutely want this to stay. So we've ended up having to buy multiple saunas to replace it at the new house. But what the one that I have, just so you guys know, is called the Impulse Aspire. And it has all three wavelengths. It's my favorite because it has the near, mid, and far infrared. And the experience in using it is incredible. I mean, it really is like, to me, like if there are two things I could really invest in, it would be a water system and an infrared sauna. Like those are the two that I kind of will sing from the hilltops. And I realize they're an investment, but I mean, honestly, if we're not allocating some finances or just resources towards these things, like you will pay for it down the road. I'm not going to say you're going to get a disease because you don't have an infrared sauna, but we just have to realize like the environment we live in, the world that we live in now. I mean, we have to go to greater measures to protect ourselves and help support our bodies. And to me, this has been a really helpful tool. And it's still something even 10 years later that I've seen the company have such high integrity and their products are just phenomenal and they work. I mean, I've had so many clients of mine over the years that have also gotten the same sauna and they love it. And I'll tell you too, just so you know, and you can talk to somebody from Sunlighten, they'll give you all the details. Like they have a great team there. But the model that we've always had, it's I think technically like a 2-person or single person. It's like I don't know, it's whatever the Impulse Aspire, like one is the smaller one. But I'm telling you, like I've gotten in there with all my kids. So like it's like me and both kids. It's very roomy. So just for those of you that are like, okay, I mean, I've got some friends, they have a really big family. They have like 6 kids and they have like the big daddy one in their house. But I'm telling you that just so you understand, like it's very spacious and roomy and I have gotten in and it's actually fun. Like there are different programs that you can do. They run for different times. They have different light frequencies. They have different wavelengths that target different things. So target immunity, target fat loss. Guys, I'm telling you, you want to find a way to really like rev the engine too on your mitochondria. An infrared sauna, we didn't even talk about this, but there is a lot that's out there on how it gives you kind of a passive cardiovascular workout because it's pumping. Gosh, I like cannot use my words today. This is not a good sign. I have another podcast after this. But it's pumping so much blood and that you're actually creating a little bit of a cardiovascular workout. You burn like mad calories. You could sit in there at night and burn a couple hundred calories. Like who doesn't want to do that? You feel good, get in the shower, do a cold shower and kind of like a cold plunge or contrast therapy. And then you get in bed, your nervous system, it feels good. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but,
not at all. I think that when you say that I think that's what you're saying is, having Sunlighten or having a good measurement of how to set a device, like the intensity, the heat, having the capacity within the device to change settings, it's a really good way to keep you from ever going into a state of unhealthy sweating or having an unhealthy aspect of releasing too much fluid. Because there is the differences between having a good sweat and also having a not so good sweat. I think that when individuals do certain forms of sauna, they want to like get so intense and so hot and sweaty, and then they want to jump into a cold plunge and they think, well, I'm going to sweat every single thing out. Sweating does not equivocate into toxic release. Not all the time. And you need to be able to hydrate well. But one thing for certain, if you're starting to sweat, the one way I love is that you work your way up. And Courtney said, like, okay, I got to this point and I started sweating. I guarantee you that point, her body was saying, it is safe for me to let go of the toxins I had for my breast implants. It is safe for me to let go of that metallic substance, the plastics. And if you force that out, like Courtney said, you're going to force that out of your fat cells, you'll go into Herx reactions. And that's an unhealthy sweat. The safe sweat is, oh, I'm not sweating as efficiently. Then you start to notice, man, it took me only a couple minutes and I started to flush this out. And then one of the biggest signs of a good, healthy sweat is the smell. If you start to smell sulfur, if you smell like eggs, if you smell like cysteine, if you go, gracious, I got out of there and my armpit, like this is what they'll tell me of patients. They're like, doc, I don't know what happened. I'm doing pretty good, but my left armpit, could you smell this for me? I'm like, first of all, I'm not smelling your armpit. That's not happening. And they'll say, oh, I got this swelling and I got a little bit of swelling in my left groin area. And they'll say that. I was like, why? Sweating out your lymph nodes. Smell has everything to do, like when you know you're getting a good toxic load out. A little bit of swelling in lymph nodes. I'm not saying I want them to be swollen. It'll show you that you're actually getting toxicity out. One of the biggest is a metallic taste in the teeth. When you're getting a good sweat on and you're getting the metals out of your mouth, that's great. When you have a bowel movement, you'll notice that it smells different. You'll say, that kind of smells a little bit rancid, maybe a little metallic. And if you do, and this is another big one too. If you notice at the end of the day, while you're doing your infrared, you start noticing your feet smell more. Like, gracious, I take my shoes off and it's a lot more. You're getting a good sweat going on. So remember, take it in steps. You know, you're not, don't try to like, you know, overdo it. I mean, it's always like nice and easy because, you know, I don't want people showing me their armpits and I don't want to armpits. I don't know how many people have told me that.
Don't DM Dr. Motley, you know, all of your bodily functions and pictures. And I mean, you see it all. So,
oh man. Yeah. I don't know how many, I can't tell you how many, like even from people who've, they've tried their best, but it's just like the thing about having a good setting on the sauna is it gives you an opportunity to like keep everything kind of in check. Because if you have strep or chronic staph, and you know you had it when a kid and you hit it hard with like as hot as you can be. What does strep hate? What does Lyme disease hate? It hates heat. Yeah. It'll come out and move and then they'll have rashes all over them. So use a good controlled setting. So yes, we both went on our talks. I think it was a great convo today. This was good.
So good. I know. I hope you guys love this. I mean, we love talking about things we're passionate about that we've actually used ourselves. And like I said, this isn't something I just started using 6 months ago. I've been using Sunlighten for their saunas. We've had like 3 of them now over, I don't know, probably has to be close to 10 years at this point. And they're just like consistently, and I know them, I know their business. Like I know the people there, like they're just across the board. There's such a high level of integrity in how they run the business, what their products, just everything, you know, and I have called them, you know, I've rarely had any issues, you know, with installation. I'm actually, if you live in Charleston and you get an infrared sauna, I consider myself to also now should be able to add it to my resume that I can assemble saunas quite affectionately, like literally cannot talk today. This is like effectively, I don't know, maybe I need like some more.
She can affectionately put together a sauna.
I mean, my brain is moving so fast that my words are not keeping up with it. And this is not good because like I said, I have more.
You got to do another podcast. She better get on the ball. You got it.
Anyway, guys, I hope that you felt encouraged by this. And you know, I learned some things because Dr. Motley's so smart. So we all learn things when he's here. Thank goodness we have him. And, and if you are interested in a sauna, so we have a really sweet deal for you guys, which is incredible. You can get up to $600 off of a Sunlighten sauna with code AXE, AXE, Dr. Axe. So make sure you do that. And like I said, they have consultations. Give them a call. They're incredibly knowledgeable, so they can help you, especially if you need to decide on which type or model to go with, size, installation, all of that. They'll give you all the details and you'll get the discount. So just mention that you heard it here. And we'd love to know. Take a picture in your sauna, tag us in it. I always love seeing like what people are using, how they're using it in their house. My parents have a Sunlighten sauna. They're moving like right now. So my dad just told me they disassembled it. They're taking it with them to their new house. So, I mean, this isn't something we're just like talking about because it's a new cool thing. Like I have seen it work and I see the value in it. So, and I know Dr. Motley does and Dr. Axe does. So it's been really fun to have this conversation and just, you know, experience tripping over my words like all morning. Oh
It's
my
all the
goodness.
sweating you did this morning from the workout. That's what it was.
Honestly, I did, guys. I posted. I was like working out and I was
You get
sucking up
enough carbs and
pollen.
starches today? I mean, not in good carbs and starch. You get enough of that today? Like,
Yeah, I
yeah.
did. I slammed down a ton. I just honestly, my brain and my mouth are like not synced up. It's like the things are just they're moving so fast. I need
You're
to.
better than I am. You ought to see me in the like today is I guess I'm a little bit better today, but usually like I don't really my brain is always processing like bacteria information from patients and I don't really wake up till like 10:30 or 11 and I finally start to wake up. So you're doing a great job.
I mean, I think the difference is that your brain is processing much more deep things and mine's processing, changing a dirty diaper and cleaning up the puppy poop on the floor and then, getting on here with
No.
you.
It's all stress in some way, so it's okay. We're like just get some more coffee or something and get one of those. Courtney introduced me to these protein square bites. I can't. There's something.
Oh, the midday squares.
Midday squares. They're the best.
They're so good. I had one
best
yesterday.
I ever had. Like I literally like craved them. Like
I know.
Courtney gave me some the other like a while back, and I was like, "Oh my god, they're the best." You know what I did when I went to Dubai for the trip, and I went out and I was like, I bought like 30 of them, and I was like, I just spent a whole bunch of money, but you know what? I ate every single one of them, and they gave me good energy throughout the day. So,
which ones do you like?
I like them all. I mean, I like. I don't know. I like the peanut butter one pretty good, but that cookie dough one is like really good. Like that's a treat. Like the cookie dough one's like a treat. And I mean, if we get them to like, like send us a lot of boxes, like maybe hit up Dr. Ack and say, Josh, go to bat for the team. Send us a few of those boxes.
I know, right? Because like I'm out here buying all this stuff. Maybe like we need to hook up or something. I know. Well, our Whole Foods just finally started carrying them like a couple weeks ago, and so I keep cleaning them out, and I just keep thinking, like,
they know when I come in, it's done. Like I got it, and then it's like, but to eat those to make sure that your body gets strong. I gotta do it.
When in doubt, get a midday square.
Oh yeah. Midday square's got to be that. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'll try to.
Well, let's
we gotta wrap it up. Okay,
let's put a bow on this episode, guys. If you love this episode, share it with a friend. Tag us in your new sauna. Get your sweat on. Start detoxifying. Share it with the whole family. It can be a whole family experience. And make sure you use that discount. Remember, it's code AXE. You get up to $600 off. Thank you for joining us. We know your time is so valuable. You could spend it on so many other podcasts. So thank you for joining myself and Dr. Motley. We hope you have a blessed week, and we will see you on the next episode.
See you, buddy.